I'm your financial coach, Michelle Kopp, and today I have the privilege of interviewing one of my clients. Today we're going to meet Lisa Rajt. And when we first started working together, I found out that Lisa was an expert traveler, frugal traveler. And so I knew I wanted to interview her so that we could learn from her and she can share a bunch of tips and tricks with us. So first, I want to just say thank you, Lisa, for being willing to share. But let's just start with where have you been? Where are all the places that you've been?
So I've traveled pretty widely in the US, the Caribbean, and Europe. Our goal ultimately, though, is to travel everywhere. So when I think of the fact that I have not yet been to Asia or Africa or South America, it kills me.
Yeah.
I have to go to those places. Like I
Okay.
cannot handle the fact that there are all these amazing places out there in the world that I have not seen. So that's, part of why we're working with you, because we need to be able to structure our finances to ultimately be able to take a couple big trips a year, including international ones.
Okay, great. And you do have a family, so you have two kids. So it's not
Yep,
just you.
two kids. Yep, they're 13 and 15. And thank God they're good travelers and they like to
Yes.
travel too. So
How young was their first trip?
So their first international trip, they were 7 and 9, and that was intentional. We wanted to wait until they were a little bit old. We didn't want to spend that money unless we
Right.
felt pretty sure
They
they'd
would
remember
remember
it.
it. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I hear that. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So tell me a little bit about the trips. You mentioned a couple places. Like, what did you do? Hotels, Airbnbs? Did you do excursions? Like, what did they look like?
Yeah, so we like to mix it up. We like a wide variety of different types of activities and different experiences. We're very intentional about taking different types of trips. I personally do not like to repeat the same trip twice.
Okay.
And I try to mix up the trip from one time to the next. So, for example, our last trip was to Portugal. And so our next trip is probably going to be somewhere tropical. One, just because everyone likes it. And we also remembered when we were on the trip in Portugal on the beach that the only time our kids are not like actively trying to harm each other is when they're in the ocean.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Great.
um, so yeah, so when I'm thinking about vacations and I'm planning vacations, I think of them broadly in terms of like vibe and landscape. And
Okay.
so for vibe, you've got like busy city versus quaint town versus countryside. And then you've got different landscapes like mountain, beach, desert. So the ideal vacation for us incorporates a couple of different vibes and landscapes. So use Portugal again. It had a big city. It also had quaint little towns. It had rolling hills and cliffs, and it had the beach. So something for everybody. It was perfect.
Okay, cool. And did you do hotels or Airbnbs? Like, what did that look like?
So we're Airbnb people, and I feel like that's a significant part of traveling frugally for us. Um, we if you are on a budget, I strongly recommend staying in an Airbnb. Um, it's often cheaper, especially if you're staying for more than a night or two. You tend to get more space and more amenities for the money. And you also tend to get added amenities that make it easier to save money. So in other words, there might be a washer and dryer, which means that you can bring
Right.
fewer clothes
Right.
and then not pay extra luggage fees.
Okay.
If there's a kitchen, you can buy groceries and prepare your own food, which is obviously way cheaper than eating out. If
Right.
there's like beach equipment, like umbrellas and chairs, you don't have to rent those things.
Mhm.
So it requires some effort to craft your search in that way and like review the listings really thoroughly.
Yeah.
But it's always paid off for us.
Okay. Great. Cool. So, okay. So that's the biggest tip that you have. What are some, now to the good part, what are all of the things that you could share that we could learn from you? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that I think airfare is really kind of that's the
yeah.
heart of where the savings can come in, because that's often the biggest expense of the trip. So I would say all good budget vacations start with research and proceed with flexibility. So I like to start with a specific region. So in this case, we'll say Central America and the Caribbean, because that's just what we're planning right now.
Okay.
And I research weather, food options, safety, a quick scan of hotel and lodging prices, the types of activities available. So I do some pretty like good research just to get that initial list of where I might be interested.
How long do you usually do that for?
It depends. I mean, honestly, it can depend on like how things are going at work, how busy my
Sure.
schedule is with the kids. It just kind of varies. Like if I can get like a good Sunday afternoon with like no social commitments, I can knock it out in an afternoon.
Okay.
So I narrow it down to a couple spots. So like for our next family trip, I'm looking at Costa Rica, Belize, Cartagena, Colombia, and Puerto Rico. And that's just based on my research and the variables that were important to me. I literally made a grid. So, I listed the locations, and then across the top, I listed the things that were important to me.
Okay.
And I made a checklist. So then I start checking Google Flights every day or so, just for a minute. I search by region. So in this case, the Caribbean, and I input the search parameters that are important to me. So for example, I don't want to be traveling for 30 hours. And so Google Flights shows you the pricing on a map so that you can see what's what, and you can vary the days that you're going and see the best deal. You can vary the airports that you're flying in and out of if there are a couple near you to find the best deal. So it's really kind of, you're just getting in there and changing all of these variables and playing around with it to just see like, where are the deals?
Okay.
If you're feeling even more flexible or adventurous, Google has a feature where you can see all of the cheap flight deals like in the next 6 months, for example. So if you have flexibility, I mean, we usually can't do that just because we're beholden to our kids' school schedules. Right. But like someday I'm going to be all over that. Yeah. And so if you have a couple of places in mind, you can then spend a few weeks monitoring like what the prices are doing in Google. And then hopefully feel confident that you're getting a good deal before you book. You might also end up like adding a location if you're consistently seeing good flight deals there. So that actually happened to us a couple years ago. We were planning a trip to Costa Rica, just kind of monitoring like the second I see a good deal, I'm going to jump on it. Well, it turned out an amazing deal popped up to Hawaii instead. Okay. We went to Hawaii. I mean, there was no way to turn down this deal. So, so that's,
so being super flexible with location, even not just being dead set on one place, but maybe having a couple. That's
exactly. I would say like flexibility is absolutely the most important factor in getting travel deals.
Right.
It's essential.
Okay.
So I want to bust a myth regarding airfare.
Okay.
For some reason, there seems to be this like misconception that the best flight prices are found like 6 to 8 weeks before the trip.
Okay.
That's completely untrue. It's completely untrue. Airfare is supply and demand, just like any economic system. So we have always found the best prices 6 to 9 months out for international trips and 4 to 6 months out for domestic. Okay. Clearly, there are good flight deals at the last minute. It can happen. But if you get one of those good flight deals, you may end up paying like a higher price for the hotel, for example, because that also functions based on supply and demand.
Right.
So in general, if you really want to do a budget vacation, book early for the best pricing.
How about the day? Because I heard Tuesdays is the best day to buy. Is that true?
So that's another really good myth. I don't think that one is true. Okay. I have heard that one as well, Tuesday morning. I don't think that one is true. Another common rule of thumb is that flights during the week are cheaper, like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Right.
That one is definitely true.
Okay, got it.
Definitely true.
Okay.
We've seen that many, many, many times. If you're willing to fly in or out in the middle of the week, you're probably going to get a better price.
Okay. Good to know. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so flights, flexibility, main thing. What else? How about
Um,
food on the trip or even
yeah,
excursions? Any
so
idea?
food is like the toughest thing for me budget wise because I'm a foodie and I also have celiac disease. So, I have to have like special bread. I can't just get
Right,
like whatever cheap,
right.
bread they have.
Yeah.
Um, so what we do for food is we make breakfast at the Airbnb using groceries that we purchase at the grocery store. This obviously saves a ton of money. We don't do anything fancy. We're literally just like cereal, yogurt, fruit. Nobody is out there scrambling eggs or frying bacon. Like we're keeping it real simple,
Okay.
real cheap. And then for lunch, we try to do something cheap. So we will either do like, if there's food trucks or a food cart or leftovers from dinner the night before or whatever it is. There have been a couple times where we've like made
Hmm.
sandwiches. So just trying to keep that cheap.
Okay.
And then for dinner, we will do a really nice restaurant, one or two nights. Um, I consider that because I am a foodie, I consider that like part of the trip. And
Sure.
we definitely have some amazing memories from like incredible restaurants we've gone to. Like there was one in Hawaii, Halewa Joe's, that was just like chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And everyone still talks about it like years later.
Okay.
So we'll do like one or two nights of that.
Okay.
And then the other nights we'll keep it like more mid-range or we'll get like pizza or something
Okay.
like that. But we always do like one or two nights
Okay.
somewhere really nice. And that tends to be an area where we splurge a little more.
Got it. Okay. How long do you usually go for your trips as well?
So I really like to go for usually like if we're going to Europe, for example, I like to go for about 9 days.
Okay.
That includes like the flight, you're going to lose a day coming back home. You're going to fly overnight on the way there. Like, um, I like to have, I think it's interesting that like in us Americans tend to do like a 7 day vacation. And
Mhm.
then people in other parts of the world, like, Europeans are like, why would you just go somewhere for 7 days? That makes no sense.
Right.
But for us, for the amount of time we usually have with our kids and with work, I actually have an awesome amount of vacation time. Like I have like 6 weeks of vacation a year.
Okay. Wow.
Mark, not so much.
Okay.
So, so yeah, I like to try to go about 9 days.
Okay. Great. Cool. So within that 8, 9 days, maybe a week there, and then a couple nights would be the fancy dinner or whatever.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And sometimes we'll, if we go somewhere like we did this in Portugal, we did this in Hawaii, we did this when we went to London and Paris. Um, we will stay in two different places. Like in Portugal, we stayed in two totally different places in the country.
Okay.
And, so one place was like significantly cheaper than the other. So,
Sure.
that can be kind of a nice way to break up
Sure.
your time, but also kind of get some relief in the budget.
Sure.
If there's one place that's like really cheap for whatever reason,
Right.
stay there a night or two,
Right.
check it out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. And then how about like excursions or like things to do while you're there? Do you have like a budget or recommendations for keeping it frugal?
Yeah, so I would say it's amazing how many cool things are free. Some of our favorite activities are like hiking, just kind of walking around, like kind of just absorbing the vibe, general sightseeing, going to
Mhm.
the beach. In a lot of places, these things don't really cost any money or just a very small amount of money.
Mhm.
Google is your best friend for finding free activities. I mean, you literally just put free stuff to do London,
Yeah.
free stuff to do Jamaica, whatever it
Okay.
is. There are tons and tons of resources and ideas on the internet about free stuff to do.
Okay.
Um, when we go on a family trip that's like 8 or 9 days, we try to have 3 or 4 like big activities that cost money and the rest are free. So, for example, in Portugal, we went on one awesome hike that was free. We had 2 beach days that were free.
Mhm.
But then we did spend money on a tuk-tuk tour, a boat trip,
Okay.
and we did a tour of some palaces.
Okay.
Two of those activities were selected by our kids from a list that we had specifically curated to fit our budget.
Sure. Okay.
So in
Great.
other words, the $600 boat trip is not an option for you, but the $200 one might be, so
Yep.
just kind of putting parameters around it for them. These are the things that, you can choose from.
Sure. That's a great idea.
You know,
Get the kids involved
so,
too.
yeah.
Cool. Okay. Cool. All right. What else? Anything else on your list of
Mm,
that?
I think that, I think every vacation budget is literally just like a microcosm of your regular day-to-day budget. So, there are some things that you're going to prioritize and you're going to spend a little more money on because it's important to you. I mean, I know people who hate Airbnbs. Like they need the consistency and the predictability of a hotel. And so, you spend a little more money to get a hotel. Maybe you really love like the structure of a cruise and you don't want to really have to plan anything. And
Sure.
so, there are ways to find deals on cruises. Like maybe you want the guidance of a professional tour guide because you don't speak the language. Like whatever kind of travel you want to do, there are ways to do it there are ways to get deals. I would say I feel like a cruise is probably a little tricky to do on a budget just because once you're on that cruise ship, they've got you.
Yeah.
But, the actual cruise itself, the package, like there are great deals all the time on cruises. So whatever you need to like fill your cup and make it a memorable or positive or rejuvenating experience, there's a way to do it on a budget.
Okay. Great. Cool. Yeah, this is great. Great stuff. I want to ask you one question. What was your favorite trip?
Oh, it's like asking me to pick my favorite child. You know what? I'm going to say my favorite trip was the first time I ever left the country. I went to London. It was the summer between my sophomore and junior year of college. I put myself through college, so I could not afford to study abroad, but I figured out a way to work abroad. I found a work abroad program. So I went over to London with a 6-month student visa without a job or an actual place to live. I stayed in a hostel. I was actually homeless for one night because I thought I was going to get this apartment, and then that the landlady was like crazy. I ended up staying on the floor of someone's room, this person that I randomly met. I mean, it was just the whole thing. But I mean, I was 19. I was in a foreign country for the first time. I made it work. I ended up living in a great apartment. I had this really cool job at a .com. It was the year 2000. So it was like the .com boom. And I just had the best time. I learned so much about myself. And I really, I always longed to be someone who traveled. And I always said that I was going to be someone who traveled. And so, the first time I was able to really make that happen for myself was just so transformative, so cool. And I will never lose that feeling, just the confidence that it generated in me, the way that I felt, just like, I literally moved to a foreign country without a job or a place to live when I was 19, and I made it work. I can do whatever. So that was my favorite.
That's amazing. Yeah. So it sounds like you're passing that on to your kids. You're starting them young, getting them to love travel. And it's more than just traveling for you. It's an experience. It's like a a way of you want to be living. And, you know, one day we talked about maybe you in retirement become a travel agent and make everybody's dreams come true. So look out
Yes.
for the right when she's ready to go. Well, that's amazing. That I love that story at the end. So, well, I just want to say thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate your time, and I feel like I am more equipped to start looking a little bit more frugally. So with travel, so I just thank you very much, and yeah, we'll end it there, and hope you guys find it valuable as well.